Hi everyone, welcome to This Old TJ. And today, project-wise, I am pulling my fuel tank. So I'll give everyone an idea of what it takes to get this job done. I have 3 projects that are running during the same span on my Jeep this week. One of them requires the fuel tank to be lowered, and 2 of them require an outright fuel tank removal. So I'm recording this as a separate video because it might take a little bit longer. Give everybody an idea of what it takes to get this done. There are 4 bolts holding it in on the rear. So we got 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then on the front side of the tank, there are, I believe, 3 across the front. So I'm going to start just by seeing if I can get the rears loosened up here. They are a 1/2 inch nut, and I sprayed them a couple nights ago with some PB Blast. I'm going to use my impact driver and see if we can get these things to loosen up a little bit, and then we'll move to the front. So here we go. We'll find out. And there's one of them off. It came off really easy and in a hurry. So we'll set that nut aside and see if I can just loosen the second one. Same with this side. I'll see if I can loosen one over here. Does not want to loosen. Let's try the one at the other end here. It is not wanting to budge either. So it looks like I'll be switching to my actual impact wrench in a 1/2 inch to see if that has any better luck. Hopefully we'll have a little better results here and won't just shear these things immediately off. That seemed to have a lot better luck. Let's see if we get this last one just outright off. Alright, that one came off with no problems. Next up, we'll move to the front retaining nuts that are up underneath the front of the tank. See if I can get those loosened up. If they loosen easily, then I'll pull my transmission jack and underneath here, raise it up to the height, which I did measure beforehand to make sure that my Jeep wasn't elevated higher than my transmission jack would actually lift. So I will be able to get it up to the top. I did verify that. I found that on someone else's video and it was a great tip. Don't lift your Jeep higher than your jack will reach. So now, slip on up underneath here and work on those front nuts. So you can see one of the nuts is almost right above where the tailpipe runs. The middle one is almost vertical over the differential center. It might be kind of hard to see up in here, but and if you listen, that one is loose. And it sounds like it just wants to spin, which isn't necessarily a good sign. Either that or it's just finger tight. And it is not feeling finger tight. It is feeling like it is just spinning. So that one may be a little bit more of a challenge to deal with. This is the driver's side. You can see it kind of up in there. You can see the spot where it looks like I've hit it with PB Blast. That's because I have. And then to get a better shot of the one that looks like it's just spinning, I don't know what's going to happen with that one. That may turn to be a major nightmare, but we'll find out. Guess that's the life of owning an old Jeep. Stuff's either going to work well, or what should be a simple project is going to turn into a nightmare. So let me grab the impact gun here. That one loosened up all right. Looks like the one in the middle, I'm at the minimum going to need a universal joint to even get the socket up on there. There's definitely some better lighting. This one's going to be hard to get a camera angle on, but it's basically just right over the differential, and that's the one I'm really worried about. So it is right up here. At the moment, it just spins freely. Try the driver's side one next. That one loosened up with no problems at all. And this one with a little weight on it might stand a slightly easier chance of coming off, but I am going to need to dig up that universal socket, which I have laying next to me. Oh, and it did actually come off. Nice, that's fortunate for me. And it looks like it may be a carriage style bolt. So now with all but the 4 bolts left that are holding it in place, it should be a matter of getting my transmission jack under here, finishing removing these nuts that are holding it up, because you can see it now moves, and lowering the thing down. But not lowering it down all at once, because there are a ton of electronics, vent lines, and fuel lines to remove. So the idea is to get enough space to work with those without ripping them out of your Jeep, because then that makes the job go a lot slower. All right, with a slight pump of the jack, basically took all the weight off of these remaining nuts. So the nuts on the rear, right in front of the bumper, are now fully removed. These should just be finger tight. And with that one, there is one nut left to remove. So this last one I left is up straight overhead here. Should be able to just reach up there and spin it off. The tank is now ready to come down, other than removing the filler neck. So next up, we'll get back topside and deal with that filler neck. So the filler neck, at least on mine, looks like it is a Torx 20. And these should come out hopefully very easily. So the bezel's loose. I guess next up I'll need to go grab my Jeep key so I can take the cap off. With the trim bolts removed, go ahead and remove my fuel tank cap and set that aside for the moment. Then it looks like we'll also have the Torx bits. Again, the T20 holding the fuel tank to the bezel. Now with the trim ring removed and the filler neck loosened out of the tank, we should be able to start dropping this down. As it drops down, it's going to have to shift a little to the passenger side. And I will grab a flashlight and show you what I mean by this. So as this thing drops down, it is going to need to slip through a tiny little slot. Other option might be taking the inner fender liner off on the driver's side, which, knowing it's pretty simple to remove, I might do, but no, that's the frame rail and the tub, so it won't matter. So I'm going to go ahead and start trying to lower this enough I can get to the various clips, wires, and everything else, and we'll go from there. Now, there is nothing I've seen anywhere that says drop it an inch or drop it 2 inches or drop it more. So to start with, I'm just going to try and lower it down a hair, and then we can go from there. All right, I am down that slight little bit, so now it's time to see if I can get back in underneath there and start removing some of the clips and wires. And the more I look at this, the more I am going to go ahead and pull the inner fender for the driver's side. So for that, I'll grab the impact gun. We'll go ahead and get this wheel off of here first. It does look, looking down through here and through the frame rail, looks like it's going to be a lot easier to do this with the passenger, or well, driver's side for certain, possibly the passenger side wheel and tire off. So that'll be next. Then we'll pull the inner fender, see what kind of space that gives us to work with. With this off, we'll get this out of the way. I'll just move it outside. And next I'll grab my trim removal tool. And so the inner panel trim, looks like there's one at the bottom, one up along. I can feel a few others. So we'll start with the one down here at the bottom. And it's starting to look like these are going to be destroyed by removing them. That being the case, I'm just going to grab some pliers and see if I can speed the process along a little better. It looks like the upper portion may not have, oh, there's one, maybe. Work our way on up around here. So next up, we got one right here. We'll try and see if we can get that one to come free without having to resort to the vice grips. We didn't need the vice grips, but it did break free. And when I say break, I mean break. And now it looks like we have one more push-in clip buried right up under the corner here in the back. At least it feels like it. Yep, there's one up there. So we'll see if we can get on that one and get it off. Actually, it just pulled free. So let's get this thing out of here. Oh, found another one at the front as well. So now that we have the inner fender out, you can see there's a lot more room to work with here, reaching the various lines and connections that are going to need to be loosened or removed to get this thing out cleanly. You can see lines up underneath there. There's no way to get a good camera angle on this, but they are up in there. So it'll be a matter of patience, unclipping them and getting them loose. I think this is one of the drawbacks to the newer generation TJ, is you get a lot more emissions lines to work with. And there you can kind of see some of them up underneath there. So it's going to be a matter of trying to work our way around to get all of those unclipped, removed, and then slowly lower the tank a little bit. See if we can get a few more without breaking any of these things off. I'm going to start up here with, I don't know if it's a vent line or an actual fuel line. It just occurred to me before I do this, I should probably go relieve the fuel pressure. Hasn't started in a few days now, but I'd rather not have high pressure fuel spraying all over me. So let's move up front and deal with that. Front and rear lockers would be in the position that has nothing. Then I've got horn, fuel pump, HPL. So that would make this go right here, my fuel pump relay. And it is in there very well. So we'll set that to the side and crank the engine until it doesn't want to start anymore. Normally when you turn the ignition on, you hear your fuel pump come on. So hopefully we don't hear that this time. So I would say we are good with that. And now we can go back to disconnecting some lines. And the first one has like a little green clip that holds it, appears to hold it in. Got one side of it to release. Alright, we got some fuel leaking right next to electrical, so we'll get all that moved very quickly. And that is one line done, so I'm going to guess that is the pressure line. It is now disconnected and sitting right over the top of it with what looks like it's a blue connectors. I don't know if this is going to be the vent or the return, but it will be the next bit I go after here. So right here, it's going to be the next one we're trying to get to release. Looks like it is coming loose. All right, so there are two lines down. And the next one will be, can I even see the electrical connector to remove it yet? And the answer would be no. I believe this line is going to be the vent for the rear axle. So I'm going to try and drop the tank down just maybe another inch. The nice thing about the transmission jacks is you can crank on them to change your angle you're working with. So these two are loose. Next one I think up will be to try and get to the electrical and then see if we have anything on the passenger side to deal with. It does look like there's a vent line that runs around to the other side. So there may be another connector on the other side. We have to do the same thing we did here. Just pull the inner fender liner. So I'm going to try and rock it the other way, so we can go down just a little bit more. And it looks like there is in fact another set of vent lines over on the other side that are going to have to come loose. So next up, I'm thinking we're heading over to the passenger side to pull the passenger side inner fender to be able to get to this stuff. So it is a lot easier to work on when you can actually see what you're working with. So next up, off comes the passenger side wheel. And I've heard people say that this fuel tank removal is a pain. I believe them. The rearmost flap on this one feels fairly loose. It feels like we're missing the pin that would hold it there. So on this side I may be able just to start prying things out. On the rear flap on this side is actually part of the inner fender, it appears. So we have it started out now. It makes you wonder what one of these old Jeeps sees in its lifetime, when a lot of stuff you expect to be there is not. Also makes me wonder if somewhere in the history of this thing it's had the fuel pump done on it, because that would definitely explain some of the missing retaining clips. Alright, it's looking like passenger side is loosened up now, other than maybe up underneath here. So let's see if I can feel around and find a couple of other pins holding things together here. Alright, I have one of them out. I'm going to find the last one. I'm going to go ahead and remove all of them. When I put it back together, I can just put new clips in across the board and call it good. So the last one is buried way up in the corner, and it looks like it's almost right on top of the frame. And trying to get an angle on it to get it to come down is maybe going to prove to be a little bit of a challenge. And there we go. Inner fender's out. Now that we've got second inner fender out, let's swing around here and see what we're dealing with on this side. So I believe that this line is going to be the one we need to also remove. It looks like it has a little clip on it, and it'll pop off. And that is probably from the part of the vent system. So I'm pretty sure we have some of the evap emission stuff sitting right back here, along with the canister. And this line right there at the back, you can see the tip of the very tip of my flashlight touching, runs the complete length to the other side of the tank and is part of that emission setup. I'm going to see if I can get this last remaining line here disconnected. All right, on a closer look at the line that's on top of the tank, I don't think it wants to come undone there. I think it wants to come undone right back in here. So right back tucked up under the tub. You can see a little white, looks like release right there. So I imagine if I can figure out how to release that, it's going to be just something that holds it connected, and there's probably an O-ring sealing it. So that'll be the next piece I go after, see if I can get that to disconnect cleanly. So I don't know if you can see, but that hose does spin freely on there. So it's a matter then of how do I release that clip. Once I can get that sorted out, I think this thing will pop right off. It is hard to get a visual on it. Almost looks like there's a tab that may pull rearward on it, a hair, to release it. So I guess I'll grab a pick and start with that, see if that might free it up a little. I think the key thing here is just being very gentle with this old plastic. I am somewhat convinced that white plastic clip up there is what's holding everything up. You can see kind of past the wiring. So I get a better image of it, but there's a white clip that goes around that vent line. And I just grabbed a long flat blade to try and get in there. That still does not seem to be doing the trick. Alright, I'm able to rotate it though. So maybe we can see what we have going on the other side. The other side almost looks like some locking tabs maybe. And if that's the case, this may have just got a whole lot easier actually being able to see what we're dealing with. So if you look, now that I spun that thing around, you can see the two little tabs. So I'm going to try and gently move those if possible. I think I felt it start to come loose finally. And as soon as it did, I also felt it pop back together and lock back in place. There we go. Push on the two tabs, get them to back off a little bit, thing snapped right out. So I believe at this point we may finally be able to go ahead and drop the fuel tank here. And I'm not sure how much time I got in this so far, but it's probably at least a couple hours. All right, I believe at this point the fuel tank is finally ready to come down. So I'm going to lower it very slightly. I got to fish the filler neck out as the thing comes down. And then I also want to double check as it comes down that I don't have any other lines that I'm unaware of that may or may not be involved here. As the first 2005 TJ schematic I pulled up looked entirely different than what mine is, which makes me think mine is a later year manufactured tank. But I do still have the electrical connector as well. So we'll see if we can drop it just a little bit more. And I'm now absolutely wearing more dirt in my face. But I do believe I have enough room to reach the electrical connector to the pump at this point. Which is way up under here. And why they built these things without any type of access panel is beyond me. I'm gonna guess probably because people that designed it figured they were never going to be working on it, so why would they care? See if I can hang a light on this side to get a little better view up under there. And it kind of appears that it may have one of those special little locking tabs. Yes, it does. Let's see if I can get the camera and get y'all a good view. So back in there, right at almost where the end of my light is, you can see the gray clip, the little red push connector that locks it into place. So that needs to come loose. And as far as I can tell, that is the last connector before this thing can drop out. So I'll grab a pick and see if I can get up in there and get that thing freed up. Being able to do this while filming it may be next to impossible, but I'll do my best. And it's starting to look like this is going to be one of those part contortionist type reaches. So rearrange where I can reach back in here lengthways. Let's see if I can get the pick right on the edge of that red tab. Pull it free. Nothing like working blind. Being able to see what you want to disconnect, but not being able to really see what you're trying to disconnect is a bit of a challenge. So I'll grab another somewhat handy little tool. Well, I guess I'll reach up under there so I can get that thing to slide. I could feel it starting to at least wiggle, so it may just be it's got enough dirt and dust buildup in there. It's going to take a little working with. Let's see if I can get the pick on the back side of it. Maybe get it to pull. And I guess the next option is see if I can drop the tank just a little bit more. Now getting a better look, I may have actually got the thing to slip loose. That's what the mirror shows. Yes, I did. So now it looks like there's a push button on the back half of that electrical plug. And at this point, I think I got enough wiggle room. I'm going to try and drop the tank down enough I can just reach the thing from the back. That may be the easiest way to get to it. Alright, I think that's about as tight as I want to risk stretching that power connection. Alright, back to grab another pick. See if I can slip it up in there and get this thing to pop loose finally. And in fact, instead of a pick, I'm just going to try a little flat blade. Let's see if it will slip up in there. Get this thing to release. Alright, next up, some electrical contact cleaner. Well, the locking tab just broke off, so. But it is off, finally. Well, now to see about finding a replacement for the little lock tab mechanism. But we should finally be able to get the tank out. The next obstacle is all the lines that have to come through from the driver's side, apparently. And it looks like there is still a actual clip on the wiring harness. Now it looks like the final obstacle is going to be routing the fuel filler neck around that. So once I can get that over, this thing should come free. I had to set the camera down there, but it takes a little twisting because of one of the vent lines. But you can see it is now finally out. So, and I think the only damage was the little locking tab for the electrical connector. Comes down with clips. I could not press it down, get it released. I tried gently lifting it. The whole thing's so stiff and brittle, it just snapped. So I have to get a new connector for that. But everything else is out. This tank is ready to get out of the way, so I can get the rear bumper bolts drilled, finish up that job, and then the next two jobs are fuel tank related. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching.